Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Magic, Creativity, and Life. Interesting conversations with interesting people. I'm your host, Thorn Coyle. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, and hope that wherever you are safe. In personal news, I'm working on a new contemporary fantasy series, loosely inspired by an old Scottish fairy ballad, and I'm having a great time with it. I'm also finalizing the table of contents for an expanded edition of my essay collection, Resistance Matters. That will launch on Kickstarter on January 21st, 2025, if you want to check it out. As always, a big shout out and thanks to my Patreon supporters who make the recording and captioning of this series possible. I wish you all the best. In today's conversation, I speak with my friend Davin Thompson, aka MC Do Dat. We met on public transit in Oakland, California, close to 15 years ago. In our conversation, I think I say 10 years, but it's definitely been longer than that. Our relationship was born of serendipity, which is its own kind of magic. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this next episode of Magic, Creativity, and Life. My name is Thorn Coyle, and today I'm thrilled to be talking with Davin Thompson, also known as Do Dat, who is an arts educator and MC hailing from Oakland, California. Davin has spent the majority of his life as a creative writer, performing artist, and engaging facilitator. Davin blends the art of MCing into his facilitation style to captivate audiences of all ages and backgrounds through thought-provoking, socially conscious music and interactive workshops. He has several musical album releases as a solo artist and in collaborative partnerships. Davin has performed on world-renowned stages such as the San Francisco Fillmore, Oakland Fox Theater, and the historic Apollo Theater in Harlem, New York. He continues to grow his artistic skills and mindfulness practice of meditation that help him stay grounded as a dedicated artist. Davin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I really appreciate the invite.
So, Davin, I ask everyone this first question to start off with. What are your creative roots? Like as a child, was it always music? Was it writing? Was it drawing? Was it dance? Was it some other form of creative expression?
It's a good question. It's always been writing. I've always had a love affair with words, as cliche as I'm sure that is. I think I wrote my first poem in second grade. It was about clouds.
Wow.
And from there, it's, a lot of different things in elementary. I wrote for the school newspaper. I ended up writing like a short story. Honestly, I was thinking about this just recently. I used to write short stories for my fourth grade class, and my
Wow.
teacher would let me read them to after lunch, like on Fridays, to the rest of the class. And the first time that I did it, they were like little silly toilet humor jokes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but the reaction that I got from the class, I was like, "Oh, y'all think this is funny?" I was like, "Oh, I could do this all day," you know. And
Right.
that really got me just really wanting to engage more with like groups of people and audiences. And after I found hip hop and like really, like discovered the craft of rhyme writing, I kind of just pushed all those other things out of the way and focused on honing my skills as an MC and as a rapper. And yeah, so that continued on throughout the rest of my schooling. And like, in between that time, I also did a little bit of like improv theater,
Mm-hmm.
and I got back into the spoken word scene. And all of any skill that you whatever your main skill is, and anything that you learn that is related to that skill ultimately feeds back into it. So me doing a little bit of theater and being on the poetry scene, it made me a more dynamic performer and a more thoughtful writer.
Sure.
uh, yeah, and that's kind of like the short version of the origin story.
First of all, how amazing that your teacher gave you that opportunity and that your classmates had such a great positive response to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Like at the time I didn't really, I kind of took it for granted, but thinking
Mm-hmm.
back in it, that's the beauty of having a teacher who's paying attention to the skills and the strengths of their students. And it's also says a lot about the school community that they were open and supportive of, me experimenting and expressing myself. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I also have a theater background. I started theater when I was a child,
Hmm.
doing community theater,
Hmm.
and through high school did theater. And that has definitely served me well,
Hmm.
as a speaker, as a teacher, all of that training, and really just engaging with people in life.
Right.
I'm an introvert. And so
Same here.
that theater training, though, enables me to show up in
Right.
ways for people that I might not otherwise be comfortable with, I think.
Right. Right. It's I remember my first theater class in high school. I felt so silly doing the things that I was being asked to do.
Right.
But then I found such freedom in being like, okay, well, this is silly, and I'm just going to lean into it. And it really helped me like open up and just kind of embrace aspects of myself that I had, maybe pushed down a little bit, some of my more quirky side.
Sure.
Mhm.
What age were you when you discovered hip hop?
I was like, maybe like 12, 11. Well, that's not true because I'm the youngest in my family and I have two older brothers
Mm-hmm.
and they were listening to hip hop. So it's like it's always been around. It's always been in the background. But I would say like when I discovered it and when I established my own personal relationship with it, um I was in fourth grade as a writer. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a movie called House Party.
Right.
And yeah, so the scene in House Party, there's a battle scene. So
Mm-hmm.
they dance off at first, and then they do the battle. And it was something, I don't know what it was exactly, but it was something about me watching that battle and again watching people react to what they were saying. I understood why what they were saying, what was being said was so impactful.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like the whole scene of it, you know what I mean? I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And just the energy around the MCs battling and the whole vibe. It just looked so much fun. And I wanted to do it. So I started writing after that. I started writing.
That is cool.
Yeah.
It's making me think of, I don't know if you ever saw that old movie Slam with Saul Williams.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was so powerful. Because I also was a poet, and I
Mm,
still write poetry, but not as often as I used to. And I used to
mm,
perform poetry, and that movie really displayed the power of the spoken word and the
mhm,
power to change minds and change energy and
mhm.
change a dangerous situation into a community building
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, I know you do a lot of ciphers,
Uh-huh.
and that feels to me, correct me if I'm wrong, like a community building activity.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about that, about the power of that?
Yeah. So um still sharpens steel. And it doesn't have to be a battle in order for two people to be competing. And I've been lucky enough to come up with a group of really talented individuals, and we always competed, whether we were like at each other like that or not. Like who has the best verse, who can have the best style, who can be the most impactful, and you learn a lot about yourself in these spaces. And the thing about doing the ciphers is it's in some cases it's like going to the gym, or at least that's how I'm treating it. Just get some reps in and like really like compete with myself and like learn more about like who I am as a performer, as an MC, like what my specific style is. Because the thing is, you can come in there and somebody can be really great at just stacking syllables,
Right.
and somebody else can be really great at just like having the most unique style, and somebody else would be a really good storyteller. and you can compete with them in the things that they do. But I've had the experience of really recognizing what I do well and like
Mm-hmm.
leaning more into that, and it makes me more makes it more specific. It makes me stand out in a more unique way, and it's also like it's just fun.
Yeah,
It's,
sure.
it's just fun. It's just it's inspirational. It's you see somebody get up there and they lose themselves a little bit, and you want to have that same experience. And
Mm-hmm.
in some other cases, especially when it comes to freestyling, you're watching somebody, it's almost like watching somebody on a tightrope, and you don't know what they're going to say, you don't know if they're going to fall off, you don't know if they're going to do something super inspired and creative. You just don't know, so it's so very engaging. And like the ciphers that I've been hosting recently, like I have a hard time sleeping afterwards just because I'm so charged up.
Yeah.
And and then there's I gotta send a shout out to this other MC who comes through and he co-hosts. His name is Frank Stickums, and he's like one of the best that I've ever been in space with like that. And his energy is so high, and he's also like so celebratory of everyone else. Like he's really, really, really good at what he does. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But he's also on the side like hyping everybody else up. You know,
Yes.
so it's really, really it for me. It's a very sacred space. It feels like in some ways like you're channeling. If some ways it feels like an outer body experience, and it's just you practice all the skills that are necessary to MC. You know what I mean? Like crowd engagement, stage presence, vocal projection, being clever, being funny. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's being ill. It's everything like in one instance. Yeah.
I love the way you talk about this process because it reminds me so much of many of my creative processes too. But I'll focus on writing because that's my primary form of expression. And when I'm trying to level up my craft,
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely focusing on some key component parts of that
Mm-hmm.
craft.
Mm-hmm.
But I reach a point where I just enter that flow state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where my subconscious has taken over. I'm in fully connected,
Mm-hmm.
right? The characters are just writing themselves, the
Mm-hmm.
words are flowing, and I'm one with the text,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's an interesting thing about learning craft and practicing craft. And
Mm-hmm.
then we almost have to make a leap to being craft,
That's right.
you
That's right.
know?
Yeah.
And that's what I hear you reflecting.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like, you want to get to the point where the craft is innate. It's second nature. So
Mm-hmm.
it goes, you go to like in the automatic mode, and then you have more options,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um and it's like I really have a hard time articulating the actual experience of it, other than it just feels so free. It feels so invigorating, and it's specifically with freestyling. It's like you just get people's attention again
Mm-hmm.
because it's in the moment. You're making this up in the moment, so it's hard not to like pay attention and watch because you don't know what's going to happen. It's not rehearsed,
Right.
you know.
Right. And that's something I think some people who aren't part of hip hop culture don't comprehend,
Right,
that this isn't stuff you've written in advance.
right,
It's not the stuff that you have completed that is on the recording.
right, right, right. Which that stuff is awesome too, and it has its own space. But it like energetically, it's something different about being able to freestyle in the moment. Like you get people's attention. Like oftentimes when I perform and I'm like, I have an actual set, I'll start off with maybe like an acapella, and then that'll
Uh-huh.
be written. And it kind of depends on the crowd and the setting, but I'll start off with the acapella so they can hear my voice and they can really hear what I'm saying. And if it's a different type of room, you know what I mean? If I feel like I might have to fight a little bit more for people's attention, then I'll start off with the freestyle. And it
Mm.
doesn't even have to be anything really. like super duper clever, just me like talking to people and engaging with people in rhyme is enough to get everybody's attention, because then it turns into another thing like, oh, he might turn around and talk to me next, or he might mention
Right.
me next, and it just engages people very quickly. Yeah.
Right. You're
Yeah.
forging connection right away.
Yeah. Yeah. You're making a establishment, right? Yeah.
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 So when you're not freestyling, or maybe it's similar when you're composing, do you feel like you start with concepts or with the words, with language?
Man, I don't know. I don't, and this is something I've been wanting to address for myself, but I don't really have a routine the way that I approach things. The things that I've been writing and I've been creating, they've been inspired by a feeling.
Mm,
And it's been inspired by me wanting to um like address this feeling and process it, make sense of it, and in some cases just get it out of my space so that I'm not walking around with it, you
right.
know? So like sometimes it starts with a word, a lot of times it starts with the music. And
Mm,
if the music speaks to me, if it's like, oh, this is a vibe that I can get with, then it'll start there. And then sometimes I'll have a concept. Other times I just need like the first line and it'll unfold from there. But
right.
more often than not, especially lately, it's been like, hey, I'm feeling some type of way about this breakup, or I'm feeling some type of way about this world event, or I seen something really stupid online and I just have to address it.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, yeah.
I know that, your music goes deep into a lot of different themes.
Mm,
You talk about social justice, you talk about social uplift, you talk about inspiration,
hmm
spiritual practice and connection.
hmm
And I know for a lot of artists, they tend to separate things out more.
hmm
I also combine a lot of things in my self expression and my art. I have
yeah,
to, right? It's just
yeah,
part of my life. And so my life and my interests and my concerns and troubles and joys and my practice
hmm
flow through the work. And your work feels very similar to me. And I think it's why I gravitated to
yeah,
your music so much.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely everything that you described, it's it's very on point. And like if I were like to describe my style of writing, it's like it's a lot of slick talk, but there's also some like jewels and there's some wisdom kind of weaved into it. So,
Yeah.
in the same piece, I'll say something that's clever, that I think is clever or entertaining, while I'm processing, like loss, or, um, just like how life can hit you from the left side, or you know what I mean? For me, it stays interesting that way, and you can
Hmm.
get a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and in one piece. So it's like you come looking for one thing, but you get a few other joints as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, speaking of jewels, on social media, you often post thoughtful things that you call jewels, right? Food for thought,
Yeah.
things that feel uplifting. And
Yeah.
I know you do have a strong spiritual practice. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how your spiritual practice helps your creative life and your life in general.
Work. Well, first,
Just a light question.
right, right, right. Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging that. Those jewels that I post online are a lot of times like things that I am um, pondering myself, and
Mm,
they're like notes to myself. Maybe somebody else will get them. Maybe somebody else will get something out of it as well. And as far as like my spiritual practice and how that ties into my creative process, um, I treat them like it's like one and the same.
mm,
And I've had a lot of spiritual experiences on stage, and a lot of like almost surreal moments, where like the ethereal becomes very physical, becomes very
Yeah.
present. And it is my belief as a like an MC, but also as a person, but as a performer, you are broadcasting a certain frequency.
Mm,
So if I step on stage and I'm broadcasting at the frequency of like love and upliftment, and I
mm,
carry that and I practice that in my day to day, I believe people will meet and accompany me at that frequency. So I'm like I write with that intention. I write from a place of wanting to engage like spirit to spirit, and speak to like, speak to healing whatever wound may be present, or like brightening whatever light is there. And yeah, and that's the intention behind it. I remember, not to go off into too much of a tangent, but I remember an album release party for my crew, the Attic, back in the days, and we had it ended up being where we had Dead Prez open up our show. They had a show at
oh,
the same time.
holy moly.
Yeah, it just lined up like that, right? Like they had a show, it got canceled. They ended up moving their show to our release party, and they opened up the whole thing. The venue was completely packed, wall to wall. It was already going to be thick because we have worked hard to get to the point where we had that kind of attention. But at one point of the show, we did the song that we were most known for, called "No Sleep." And there's like, because we have been performing pretty much every week for 2 years, people knew when we got to a certain part in the song, like we would just turn all the way up and we would just start jumping. And right before we got to that part, I don't know what it was, but I seen this like shockwave come over the audience. It was like a heat wave just come off of the audience, and everybody in the venue was just jumping at the same time. And
Mm,
it's like instances like that, where um, I went to see KRS one time, and it was a similar thing where I just kind of feel the energy in the room shift a little bit. So it's like energetically, like these things like are being communicated on a real subtle level, you know?
yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and because I'm aware of those things, and because I believe those things, I lead with those things when I perform. And I want people to see that this is a person who is like lost in love in their craft. And
Yeah.
so much so that you can do it too. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like you can, whatever it is, whatever you love this way, whatever you're that enthusiastic about, um, you can do it too. And you can be as close to your spirit through whatever that practice is.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, I also try to put out in the world things that feel useful,
Mm-hmm.
beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
coming from a place of love. And it doesn't mean that I'm not snarky or sarcastic or
Right.
get angry at the world,
Right.
right?
Right.
But what do I want to share?
Mm-hmm.
Because the world, especially the way we communicate right now, like social media is such a gift and a curse,
It is
right?
indeed. Say it again.
And there's so much noise, first of all. There's so much constant outrage and terror
Mm-hmm.
being spread
Mm-hmm.
in the name of awareness, but it's not really awareness.
Right.
It's manufactured outrage to get an emotional response,
Yep.
right? So I try to only put out things like that if I have a call to action.
Uh-huh.
If I say this terrible thing is happening, but here's something we can do,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
So I'm wondering how you navigate that, right? Because I know you're connected.
Yeah.
You have feelings about social injustice. I mean,
Right.
you're a black man in America, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so I don't know if you have any thoughts for people listening about how to balance that so that we're not ignoring
Right.
what's going on in the world, but we're also not feeding the machine that keeps us in states of outrage and desperation.
Yeah, that is really, really, it's a really tricky question. Because I think that it is necessary to express and to be vocal, um, and to also to be like informative.
Yeah.
I think also what you touched on, there's so much information that's available that you have to check it twice, three times,
Yes.
and be clear where the like where these things are coming from.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate um that you said that you are conscientious about like, okay, well, this is what's going on and this is where we can go with it, or this is something that can be done with it. So it's just not people are sitting with, all of this heaviness.
Yeah.
um for me, what has been really, really helpful, is having a strong meditative practice
Yeah.
and being able to have awareness. So when I encounter certain images or certain information or certain conversations, I have a little bit more control and agency in how I respond to those things.
Exactly.
And I would offer that to your audience or to anybody that I come across, and and just being like, well, how is this landing for you? How is this hitting for you? Like, where are you coming from with this personally? And what feels what's resonating with you, what feels like it's in alignment with you, and moving from there. And that doesn't mean that your perspective is the all out truth. It doesn't mean that, like, I'm more right than you are. It just acts as a proper base for us to have a discussion and come to some sort of common perspective, or not, you know what I mean, but just have
Right.
some sort of clarity, you know.
Right. Well, and that's what's important to me as well. I need the ability to return to my center, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
meditative practice, any kind of deep spiritual practice,
Hmm.
gives us that ability
Hmm.
to return to center because
Hmm.
the world is often trying to throw us out of center.
Right.
And the less centered we are, the less agency we have.
Exactly.
Um, so I appreciate that reflection. That's great.
Yeah.
And I also just love the way all of that filters through your music. I know we've touched on that already, but
Mhm.
your spiritual practice is such a strong thread. Not that you rap about, I've been meditating this morning,
Right. Right.
but it's that presence you're talking about and that sense of connection
Yeah.
you're talking about.
And thank you for that. And I want to rap about meditation. I just want to find a way to do it that feels authentic and is not leaning into any tropes,
Yeah.
and is also like accessible for people who may not meditate or
Yeah.
may not view spirituality the way that I do. Like, I want to make it, um I kind of want to make it plain and simple, so that they can, so that it can be accessed. Like, who's been like a real strong source of inspiration as far as writing for me goes lately is
Who?
Khalil Gibran.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I like really, really enjoy um, his word choice, and I really enjoy like the simplicity of what he's creating. It's like every line is so thoughtful, and you
Yes.
could you could meditate. You could just take one line and really just sit with that. And if I have any current aspirations as far as a writer, is to be able to convey such an expansive idea in such short form,
Yes.
and I would like, in terms of like reflecting a spiritual practice in my art, I would like for it to be present in that kind of way. I'm
Mm,
not beating you over the head with it, but it's like it's there. If
yeah.
you want it, it's there.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. This is also making me think that I should tell listeners the
Mm.
fact that we met
Oh
years
yeah.
ago now
Right.
on a BART train, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a public transit train, BART train in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked you about a book you were reading,
Yeah.
and we ended up in conversation. And I feel like something in me recognized you, and something in you recognized me in that
Mm-hmm.
moment. And the fact that we stayed in touch for over a decade after that
Yeah. It's a trip, huh?
is really powerful when you think about it. Like, usually two strangers meet on a train, maybe they'll say a couple sentences if they
Mhm.
speak at all, and then they go on their way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really do think it's because you and I have, despite our vast differences,
Right.
there was that point of connection we had that we both went, oh, right, you,
Right. Right.
there you are.
Yeah. And like I reflect on that more often than not, right? And at some point in the conversation, you remember what you said to me about, like, I think we were talking about like different forms of spirituality, like what you believe, what I believe. Um, and you remember what you said? You said
No.
you was like, some people start off in the woods, some people start off by the beach, some people start off in the city. But the closer you get to the mountaintop, the more the conversation becomes the same. The more
Yeah.
the perspective becomes the same. That sat with me, or it's continued to sit with me, um, like throughout this decade of knowing you. And I really appreciate that reflection. I really appreciate that we could have, that we can start out in different places, and we
Yeah.
can have maybe different, like different beliefs. But the more that we engage with like the truth, or more that we engage with spirit, or you know what I mean, the more that
Yeah.
conversation becomes, it's like, okay, I'm talking to somebody I've known for a while now.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
you know, I'm talking to somebody that I've known for a while. Yeah.
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 So I realized it's an unusual story, and I should let people know that, yeah, we met on public transit.
Yeah. 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 Nice chance meeting, and a cool conversation.
um, so currently, what are you working on creatively or spiritually? What's at the heart of your work these days?
These days. So creatively, I have some music that I've been sitting on for a little while. That I want to decide how I want to release it. And I'll be frank, and like, releasing the music is not my strongest suit. It's like, publicity, marketing, and no, and on and on and on and on. It's not the most exciting thing to do. So, but I want to give myself the justice of having as many people, have the opportunity to hear my music as widely as possible. So,
Yes.
I'm taking my time and thinking about how to do that, while at the same time being like, well, just release it, just put it out, and whoever's supposed to hear it will hear it, and they'll get what they're supposed to get out of it. Just keep creating. So I have an album um, that is done. I'm really excited about it because I've also dipped into producing, and at least at the initial completion of the album, I had produced half of it. I done dropped off maybe about 3 songs now, 3 joints that I'm really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
And this upcoming year, I'm just gonna release consistently. I'm gonna probably just do singles, just singles until I get enough to say, okay, now it's a full project, and then just keep on celebrating the work. Um, mhm.
That's a you're bringing up a thing that's tricky for, I think, a lot of creative people,
Mhm.
right? Because on one hand, I do feel the most important thing is to write and release, right? To share the energy, share the gifts, share the music, share the poetry, the writing, the movie, the whatever it is.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, there's something about respecting yourself as an artist and
Mm.
respecting the work as a whole,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
saying, how do I better position this to reach a broader audience?
Yeah.
what angles can I work on
Yeah.
this that still feel authentic,
Right.
but that will facilitate a broader connection?
Right.
And it's one of the reasons I went back to writing fiction after years of only writing nonfiction. Was I thought I can potentially reach more people with these ideas
Mm-hmm.
through fiction, because it captures the imagination in a different way than my nonfiction does, right?
Right. Right.
And that was both something that was naturally emerging from inside of me at that time in my life, but
Mm-hmm.
also it was a conscious choice.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what's your resistance around trying to reach different people than you're currently reaching? Because I think every artist comes up against this.
Mm-hmm. Um, I I wouldn't say that I have a resistance to meeting to reaching more people. I would say that it's more so about me being organized and like, putting making my work putting my work into like a machine to where it can be accessed by more folks.
I see.
I don't, and in the same breath, I also don't want to feel like I am, I was going to say selling out, but I think more accurately being inauthentic or disingenuous to the culture.
Yes.
And I've been in situations where, I was getting an opportunity to travel. I was getting an opportunity, I was being paid, and I was getting an opportunity to be in front of an audience that I wouldn't otherwise be in front of. But the project that this was attached to, I honestly didn't have much interest in outside of those things,
Right.
you know? And
Yep.
I would say, like, if that's the situation, if that's the vehicle that's going to allow me to reach a wider audience, well, I'd rather just cipher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd rather just cipher with people who are um, really, you know what I mean? Or it's not, I wouldn't even say it's the audience. I would rather be involved with other creatives who we more closely align in our values and our understanding of hip hop culture,
Yes.
and I don't really care to be, what I'm saying? Like I don't need to be Kanye West or
Right.
Kendrick Lamar. I don't want to be famous in that way. I'd rather be
Yeah.
impactful and have the respect of the people who are making those moves.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
That totally makes sense to me. I mean, I've certainly turned down some amazing offers
Right.
because they didn't feel right.
Right.
And, early on, especially when I returned to writing fiction,
Hmm.
people were telling me, oh, you have to do things this way to sell more books and make more money. And I'm like, I'm not doing things that way.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
does not work for me. I have to find my way.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, all these years later, right, I'm successful.
Hmm.
Might I be making more money than I am now? Maybe, but
Right.
that is not what's most important. So I agree with you on that.
Right. Because you also want to be happy, right? Like,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like you can have money and still hate your job or
Right.
hate what you're doing. So like so much of it is like I feel so happy about what I'm doing and how I'm creating. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like I can get in the flow state and get lost in this because I'm not worried about, you know, disgracing, you know what I mean, or just not paying tribute to this thing that brings me so much fulfillment and enrichment for my soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. No, thank you.
I'm I'm going to pivot slightly and ask, um, what are the rewards of working with younger people for you? I know over the years you've worked a lot with youth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you're still doing that, but
No, no, no.
what do you learn from that? What have been some of the rewards from that?
Um, it's that question is. I'll start from my most recent experience working with youth. So I was teaching mindfulness and meditation in elementary schools. And one immediate benefit is it's kind of hard to walk onto an elementary school campus and be in a bad mood. You know what I mean?
Right.
Especially when you're interacting with these like little kindergartners who are just present. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Mm-hmm.
just themselves. And you get a little kindergartner hugging your leg. If whatever is bothering you, you're gonna be like, okay, I can take a break from that and just be with this young person. Um, and and working in a more creative space, like as like a artist development, um, you are watching someone who is discovering their process. And something precious about that is they're making this up as they go along. And you get to witness them form, and you get to pull a little bit of like jewels for yourself. I'm like, wow, I wouldn't even have thought of approaching it in that way,
Right.
because this is someone who is new. This is someone who is like learning, and this, because they're learning, their mind is free in a way that maybe my mind hasn't been, because I've drilled in this specific kind of routine or approach. Like I
Right.
remember, like working with this one artist. I was trying to get this artist to rap the way that I rap,
Right.
and we just got frustrated, and we had to take a second. And when I took a second, I thought about it. I was like, okay, this person is not me, they're them. So let me just lean into their process and, um, you know, pump them up the way that they want to be, what they want to produce. And in that way, I learned for myself, like, okay, sometimes you got to just relax a little bit and just be with the process and see what comes of it.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then, you know, um, resilience, resilience. In
Right.
another, in another, in another iteration of my career, like working in a hip hop therapy capacity, we got to really see the resilience of the human spirit through some
Mm.
very, very difficult situations, familial, systematic. You know what I mean? Like even just like personal. And
Right.
there is just something about these young folks who have had a pretty sour time so far, and their ability to still bring joy into a space,
Wow.
and also to see them like grow through whatever adversity they have encountered. And that doesn't mean that it's completely defeated or it's been dissipated, but you just get to see that resilience, you get to see that growth, and it's inspirational. It's like, if you can change, then I can change. If you can grow, then
Right.
I can grow. And that's been the most like awesome thing. Is like, um for a while I was denying myself as a teacher. Like, I'm not a teacher, I'm a rapper, I'm an MC.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And I've come to understand that MCing and educating they're very, very similar. They're very similar, if not the same. The presence that you hold in a classroom is very similar to the presence that you hold on stage. The way that you create connections with your students is very similar to the way that you create connections with your audience.
Yes.
Or if you want to take it into another route, the way like a minister, holds space in a church, the way
Right.
that you project yourself and you make connection with, with that audience. It's the same. The closer you get to the mountaintop, it's the same, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been like kind of a blessing that I hadn't counted until just recently. And I'm like very humbled to have like a legacy, through the people that I've mentored and I've worked with, um, and their growth. And I celebrate their growth like it's my own, because it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Years ago, um, I had this disagreement with some people that I was teaching with. I was co-teaching,
Hmm.
and I insisted on calling myself a teacher, and they were like, "Oh, I'm not a teacher. I'm a facilitator." And I was
Hmm.
like, "Well, first of all, facilitation is its own skill set,
Yep.
and it's a like to be a good facilitator takes a lot, and it's a different skill set."
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
what I felt they were doing and not saying they were a teacher was they were not respecting themselves and the work.
Hmm.
And I was like, I respect myself and the work and the people who are coming to us
Right.
enough to say, yeah, I'm going to take that responsibility on,
Right.
that
Right.
I'm a teacher.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, respecting anyone who has taken time and invested in their learning, to get degrees and to hold on to that experience, and also not to disqualify those of us who have not went that route but are still educators and are still teachers and still hold that space.
Right. A degree doesn't matter.
Mm,
I mean, a degree only matters in that it's a marker
mm-hmm.
of time put in,
Right.
effort put
Right.
in. But
Mm,
a lot of us put in time and effort in other ways, as you just said, right?
right.
You have studied and trained deeply
Right.
for years,
Right.
and that's something to honor and to name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here we are,
Mm-hmm.
we're both writers,
Mm-hmm.
and we know the power of words. And
Mm-hmm.
so I appreciate that you're claiming that word, teacher.
Yeah. 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 Yes. Yes. I am a teacher. I am a teacher. I am an educator. For me, more specifically, I like to say that I am an MC,
Yeah.
and you know, I educate, I entertain, I enlighten. At least that is my objective, to do all.
Educate, entertain, enlighten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I like that.
yeah, and that that kind of that again, it speaks to like my objective, and goes back a little bit in the conversation to where some of my aspirations are, is like I want to have, like, I want folks to have a spiritual experience listening to and engaging with my performance. And I don't fully have the language to articulate it in a way to where I feel like people can just anyone can access it, but that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah.
And I would like to be able to speak to the subtleties of what is taking place between a performer and the audience, you
Mm.
know, and the energetic exchange of ideas, the raising and the dropping of frequency. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like allowing people to project, what I'm saying, themselves onto me as a performer, or project myself out to them. Like these are ideas that I'm cultivating. I don't have them quite yet. You know what I mean? But it's my plan is to be there before the end of it all. You know.
That's beautiful. And it really speaks to the next question I was going to ask you, but I feel you've already answered it, although say more if you feel called. I was going to ask what your why is, but I think you just spoke to what your why is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that, and um currently my why is just because it helps me preserve. Um it helps me stay sane. And
Mm,
it I it's one of those things where I have had people, through me working through my process, I feel like I've also helped people work through their process.
right.
And part of my why is I feel good at the end of the day if I know that I've contributed to making the space around me better. And I have come to realize recently that uh, the most direct way to do that is for me to take care of my inner self, through
Mm,
meditation, through creative expression, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's my why, because this is the um, most direct way that I know how to impact the world around me. Yeah.
thank you for that. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, Thorn. This is awesome.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation, really rich, and I appreciate you so much. And I want to thank all of our listeners today. Once again, I've been talking with Davin Thompson, also known as MC Do Dat,
Yes, indeed.
DODAT. And you can find his music at do.dat1.bandcamp.com. That's do.dat number 1, and I'll put that in the show notes. And you can find me at thorncoyle.com. Thanks for joining us. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed what Davin had to say. He's such an insightful, lovely person. I always enjoy talking to him. As always, you can support this podcast over at my Patreon, patreon.com/thorncoyle, and please check out Do.Da.T's Bandcamp page. Wishing you all a magical, creative day. Be well.